I also pulled together um, some information that based on some feedback that you all had last time. So I'm hoping to also touch on some of that as well. But essentially, last time we went through coalition development strategies and various approaches. We also had opportunities to talk with each other and learn about how we would put together a coalition based on some real work that's facing all of us today, which I thought was an amazing opportunity for us to share and learn from one another about how we would approach putting together a coalition around prevention and um, just any topical thing that's facing us today. So with that, we will go through how to enhance social media engagement for alcohol and drug prevention awareness within an online community. We will also explore how to maximize participation by creating positive engagement between participants in an online community. And then we'll also have an opportunity, hopefully some time at the end, for you all to start putting together a strategy. And if we don't have time for you to tactically start working on the strategy, I'll certainly share the template that you're all welcome to use and fill out yourself. I just want to say again, thanks for being here. I know it is the day before a 3-day holiday weekend when it's usually a little bit lighter in terms of work. So hopefully after this session, you all can enjoy your weekends or wrap up for the week. So with that said, I know there was some feedback last time to talk about how the youth engages with media and social media. So I wanted to spend a few minutes on that this morning. I thought I did a little bit of research. I was fascinated with some of what I found, and I thought that I would share that with you. And then we'll go through some tips on how to engage participants in a virtual world. I know that was also a topical theme that came up from last time. And then we'll go through a bit more on the social media engagement and how we can support productive engagement in these online communities. And then, of course, developing the strategy if we have time at the end. So with that, I I again I did a bit some research and I found that how are kids using social media and media in general. So in terms of media, it there as we know, it's a communication technology that is used to consume and create messages, and this can include TV, video games, books, magazines, and kids are using social media and media these days to socialize, communicate, create, play, and learn. So more tactically, they're also using social media that facilitate communication between people and organizations. And just as from a framing perspective, social networks are sites that allow kids to connect with friends and family. And communication hubs are where kids, like friends from one another, can write on walls and post public and private thoughts and pictures and links to music. And we'll talk more about the various platforms a bit later today, but just kind of from a high level perspective, we have, Facebook, um, Instagram, Tumblr, Skype, Twitter, some of the ones that our kids are using today are certainly becoming more and more popular as time goes on. So what do we need to know? I thought this was interesting. It's a little bit older. I imagine that the numbers are even higher now. But basically, every day, kids are texting, they're visiting social media sites. About half are going on Facebook, 11% are sending and receiving tweets on Twitter, and 23% are using at least two types of media every day. And 75% of kids are on a social networking site. So I would say the relevancy of this training is certainly useful, even with the younger populations that we may be trying to target. And I also found this was interesting that despite everything else, and I think a lot of us probably experienced this with during the pandemic, is that people actually prefer FaceTime with one another in person rather than screen time. Um, but you can see here that their favorite ways to communicate, this is from an article about teens. They do prefer in person, but you could see by text is high. Um, Social networks is 7%, by phone is 4, and then on Twitter is 1. So you could see that texting is actually fairly high relative to even social networks and talking on the phone. So I thought that was really interesting in terms of perhaps there's an opportunity for us to use text messaging to reach out to kids and teens. So I thought that was interesting. Um, they also believe that it, social media takes away from time that they can spend with others face to face. It also causes a distraction from with people being present, and it's often frustrating when friends are paying more attention to gadgets rather than the people who are there. So I thought this was interesting too, is that while we certainly have been over indexing on using technology and social media, people still do feel that A, being in person is better and more preferred than not. And B, it's frustrating when we're on our phones or distracted by technology when we're with other people. So I thought that was interesting as well. The other stat I found is that 91% of teens with smartphones are using social networking sites. I just thought this was super interesting, and also is a very, very high percent of overall usage for social networking. Um, so I thought, in terms of a role that we could potentially play in this space is that we can educate parents about the practice of online safety. So it's important that we're sharing with parents and members of the community about how we can use security controls and privacy settings. So you could set like which type of websites you can visit, which apps you could download. Um, it's also important that there's tips on how to stay safe when using social networking sites. There's often a lot of bullying and poor language being used. So there's ways that we can encourage parents to also help their kids to be safe when it comes to being online. And again, it's important to educate parents that they they play a huge role in influencing their kids and their behavior online. Um, and it's important to draw upon school-based programs, sibling relationships, and conversations with adults for some additional safety strategies. But it's important that they're also seeing role modeling being done with parents and how they're engaging in with their own social media and online platform and engagement. So I thought this was really interesting as well. The other point here is that it's important that we are having an ongoing conversation with young people about activities online and reiterating family values. One thing is that um, being able to tell kids and youth that are online, hey, anything that you do will be searchable for the rest of your life. Anything that you put out on the internet will be something that people are going to remember you by and see if they do a search for your name, or if they are looking you up on some index, or if you post a video, that anything that is created and posted online is something that can be searchable and traceable in the future. So you want to encourage parents, and if you have kids, to ensure that they're portraying a version of themselves that they would want others to see and be remembered by in the future. If someone were to search their name, and this is particularly important when applying for a job or advancing in society, you want to make sure that you're portraying a brand of yourself that is commensurate with your core values. So I also there's a lot of online toolkits and resources. Common Sense Media was a group that I looked at based in San Francisco. that provide strategies and toolkits and tips for helping kids to stay safe online. And again, I'll share this with everyone afterwards. But I just wanted to do some framing on how youth are engaging with online communities and social media in general as we advance through the training today. So with that, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about engagement and engaging participants in a virtual world as we start to explore using social media and these online coalitions and forums for communities to interact and engage. So the first thing is that we have to be present. And I know this is increasingly difficult in the virtual environment that all of us have been operating in, but it's easy for us to become passive participants in meetings. For example, like in this one, all of us are choosing, I think, culturally to have our cameras off. I've done a few of these trainings, and it seems like that's kind of the norm. But it's harder then to assess whether or not people are paying attention and whether or not people are listening and not multitasking and doing other things. And there has to be some level and degree of trust as well that you have with participants. Just because you can't see them, it doesn't mean that they're not participating or listening, or that they're taking notes and trying to uh, be ingrained in the content maybe in a different way. And also some people with the screen time, there's a real fatigue with so many meetings and back to back constantly being on camera. It's certainly a lot interesting, very interesting. And the other thing I want to mention is that um, studies have shown recently that people are actually feeling more included in meetings because of the like raise hand feature, or with cameras on, like there's opportunities for people to interject and ask a question. Whereas before, if you're in a large meeting room and you're a bit on the more introverted side, you may feel less comfortable participating in the meeting or the forum. And online and meetings being shifted to virtual actually provided an opportunity for more people that maybe weren't participating before to have a voice. So just thought I would call that out. So the first tip that I have is that connection is key. So this is where it's important to provide partner or group work and allow people to work together and to form and build connections. There's low stakes things like icebreakers where you're creating connections in the virtual world and people are like sharing that they're human, that they're all here. But then I think you take it to the next level is when you're actually allowing people to work together in groups and have a discussion and dialogue. Another thing is that it's important to remind participants that you're a real person. And I think often when we're representing an organization and we're hosting like a Facebook group or a Twitter account, that the people who follow or that are liking the group don't actually know that it's people that are behind it. So, and often that's by design, right? We don't want people like contacting our personal social media accounts, but it's important to then make it human that you're a real person behind the organization. So I thought like things like recording a video of yourself, telling people about your research, your interests, and just making it more personal and something that people are able to connect to. Because if you don't, then it's just another post out there, a random static post that people are just kind of see in a vacuum, and it's not really creating any type of engagement. It's just one-sided pushing information out. And then it's also important to share if people want to contact you, how and when you're available, or if you have office hours or opportunities and times for people to actually connect with you if they are interested in doing like more of a one-on-one session. The other thing is that active learning is super important, and it's really enhancing connection to content. And what I would say is that it's not just, this could transcend course content. A lot of the research that I did was in context of like an online course, but this actually does apply to any type of online instructional framing that we're trying to push information out and educate people in the community and build connections. So leveraging hands-on pedagogical methods and tools, again, creating large and small group discussion, more peer-to-peer collaboration, hands-on learning exercises, lectures that embed instructional tasks, creating more synchronous online or hybrid instruction. So creating a discussion forum and posts for people to share their experiences, and have people standing up and actively engaging. And it's important that, we're allowing these exercises to promote class and community participation. The more we can take the information that all of us have and the data around the story and message we're portraying, to translating that into how people can use it in their daily lives, and doing some type of activity or some type of collaboration together, that's when the real engagement and learning happens, rather than pushing out information like in a newsletter or in an email. People will see that, but there's no way for them to engage with it. You could read a statistic on a page and say, I shouldn't do something. But if you're actually engaging with a collaboration or in a group, you're then going to the next level of learning and development. So again, it's important that anytime we're pushing information, that we understand, take a step back and figure out, what do we want people to be able to do? Why? What is the purpose and relevance? What do we want people to accomplish? And what do we want them to know? So again, being able to provide information explaining the what, why, how, and criteria for the information we're trying to share and the outcomes upfront, for then people to engage in the content. So for a really tactical example of this is that I've seen, and again, translating back to what we were talking about last week in terms of the coalition, is when we actually take a real issue or health concern or prevention effort that we're trying to implement, when we actually drill down and localize that, what is it that we want people to take away from what we're saying? And how do we want to do that? And so being able to front load and maximize, so creating structures, setting expectations, coming up with communication system, keeping the lessons current and relevant, encouraging people to bring relevancy to their own lives and how they can relate to what we're trying to say. And again, allowing a space and time for participant voice and choice. So this is how we're allowing people to react to the content that we're putting out, and then also translating it to what that means for them as participants. And again, it's important that we allow opportunities for people to engage with the content and showcase that how we're doing it goes back and translates to what they're doing, and also providing some type of space for people to come and share together in a community with one another, and to learn from one another, and more of like a community of practice environment is super, super important as we think about engaging people. I also thought that it's important that with our coalitions and with our communities, that we showcase participants their work and the accomplishments. So one way to do this is, if you have model students or model individuals that you want to showcase and bring in their story, you could perhaps record a video about their experiences with the topic at hand, and then have that posted, and so that people can watch it and visit it to see what was explained, and also like the notion of allowing people space and time to reflect and engage with one another in the content is really important on the social emotional learning perspective. Again, high quality videos and Zooms are super important. So we want to start with ensuring that the quality of videos and content being pushed are high quality. We want to make sure that if it's a Zoom session, that there's no background noise, that you're situating yourself close to the microphone, that you're preparing slides and content that are easy for people to follow, and then ensuring that a link is pushed out as well. And again, using inclusive practices, so recording the meetings, providing transcripts of the meetings afterwards is also super important. And we also have to think about where we are today in terms of all of us feeling this notion of a pandemic brain, where we have to really scale back and think about less is more. So how can we achieve objectives and teach the essentials participants need to know the most engaging and effective ways? Right now, everyone is feeling this Zoom fatigue, and they're it, we're not just they're just in like information overload to a degree where you may be sitting on meetings all day and you're just on Zoom going back to back meetings. And this is how um, our students are experiencing life today. Like things are online. Even when you're doing an in-person face-to-face type modality, you still have the fatigue of being tied to a computer all day, and it's really a lot. So it's important that we are effectively using people's time and not just dragging things on for the sake of dragging it on. Also, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it won't be, especially as we're going through this work. Especially if you're doing a forum like this, where you're lecturing and kind of guiding people through the content, it's important to be clear and concise, but it's not going to be perfect. And participants are also learning these new pedagogical tools and how to interact in online environments as well. So it was accelerated during the pandemic, but also participants are learning how to shift their mindsets and how they've traditionally learned in a classroom, or with more of a one-sided approach to how information is shared. So I wanted to put this out there in terms of thinking through, just putting yourself in the perspective of people today, and just how it can just be a lot of information thrown at people. And it's more, I think, points to a larger rationale for why we need to think through a realistic strategy for online engagement and community engagement before we just start doing things and imploring things right away. Because I think the messages get lost when there's so much information being pushed out there to people. And also the desire for active engagement, I think it's becoming more and more challenging. So being able to find ways to create relevancy and purpose behind the work that we're doing is always necessary to build a strong community and followership with what we're saying. So in terms of social media engagement, so again, we'll kind of go through this quickly. It really just refers to online tools. So this is the exchanging of ideas, information, videos, pictures, graphics. It could be about anything, but it's really online tools and services that allow this exchange of information. And it also allows easy sharing and distribution of content so that professional work can be shared through various networks. And I think this is really a cool opportunity for all of us here in just understanding a little bit more about the various platforms and who's using them and how we can engage our participants and communities with social media. So the various types of social media. So we have bookmarking sites and social news sites such as Digg. There's also blogs and microblogs like Twitter and Tumblr. social networking sites, Facebook and Instagram. There's shopping, there's multimedia sharing like YouTube and Flickr. And then there's also virtual worlds and virtual reality, which is becoming more and more prevalent today, where we're seeing um, art, more of a virtual world for people to do experiential learning. I kind of think back to, I don't know if people have played games like Sim City or The Sims, but there's more and more these type of virtual world games where as the user, you actually put yourself into a real world scenario and have to navigate through a game or a virtual world. I remember when I like back when I was in grade school, there was this like lemonade stand game where you basically assume the role of, it was a very basic game. You assume the role of someone who is in charge of the lemonade stand, and you have to buy the ice, you have to buy the materials, and essentially you run the game, and then you run out of lemons, it rains, so less people, or you set the pricing too high, or you bought too much ice that it goes bad at the end. But you essentially put yourself into the modality of running the business and thinking about how you would live and work through the scenario of the lemonade stand business. I thought this was really interesting, and perhaps there's an opportunity here for prevention strategies that we actually take it into a more of a virtual world or a simulation type game where we are having people see the effects of marijuana, drug use, excessive alcohol on themselves. Like, just, I don't know, like actually putting themselves in that scenario. I just think it's interesting. I don't know, man. And I don't know if there's any type of things out there like that today where like for prevention, but I think that could be an interesting opportunity where you're actually taking it to the next level. So who's on social media? Of course, organizations. So a lot of the organizations, or all of the organizations likely that we're affiliated with, are on social media in some capacity, whether it be on LinkedIn or on Facebook or Twitter, etc. Um, Pretty much every organization, I would say, has some type of social media, and also that can include a website with a discussion board, for example. That is an example of a social media page, just because it's not part of a broader organization that we may recognize. Or you going on Facebook, it's like, again, still creating a space for people to share and exchange ideas and information. And then of course individuals, uh, all individuals these days, I feel like, are on some form of social media. So I thought this was interesting just to showcase the participation rates. So this is just active users across the various platforms from 2020. You could see here some of the platforms folks are on, Reddit and Snapchat. TikTok is also becoming really important, really popular, where there's like short videos. Instagram also, as of late, has picked up a lot of steam. WeChat was another one that was interesting. I think probably more relevant outside of the US. And then WhatsApp, I also thought was interesting too, which is a text messaging platform. And I think this goes back to the earlier points around uh, teens and young adults engaging more with texting. So I thought this was interesting to see this in terms of that. And then of course YouTube, where those videos is also really, really popular. From a comparison perspective, I thought this was nice to see almost a summary view of the different platforms. And I would say the ones that are really popular today. So we see like Pinterest is more of a discovery site. There's large opportunities for exploring your different interest areas like style or food or parenting advice. Um, I think Pinterest started out a lot of people thinking that it was mainly for a female audience, but we're seeing more and more increase in males using it, and there's 250 million monthly active users. With Twitter, it's a short post, so you have 280 characters. There's a lot of active users. Of course, we're seeing a lot of news right now about the Elon Musk Twitter acquisition, which is interesting. Um, but it's really a quick and short message that you can easily just push information out to people. Um, I've seen Twitter used in some really cool ways during events, and also during like when there's like information that's happening real time. So for example, if you follow like a local police department or the fire department, you can get information usually more real time than it's actually reported on the news. So I think it's in terms of like from a relevancy perspective, if we're able to engage with our communities and share information or news as things are coming real time, it's a great way to build followership, and to also like get more engagement. One interesting thing is during the Napa fires here in the Bay Area, um, the smoke, you could actually smell the smoke all the way in San Francisco, which is about 60 miles away. And I thought like the building was on fire. I went on Twitter and I actually saw that the fire department was posting about like, oh, the smoke is really bad. It's from the Napa fires, et cetera. So I think it's just, again, this is creating relevancy. I probably normally wouldn't have followed the local police department and fire department, but it's again creating more relevancy around the messages that we're trying to convey to our communities. Facebook is really mobile first, so a lot of people are engaging with Facebook on mobile, and also using the Facebook messaging feature. Um, a quarter of the users are in the 25 to 34 range, and I would say even probably more so at the ages below 25. And this is really where people are sharing links and information. What's interesting about Facebook is that for a successful social media campaign, you have to be sharing information that is accurate and that has the most updated information. What tends to happen on Facebook is when there's constant sharing of links and even individual people's messages, those tend to go to the top, but they may not always have the most accurate and up-to-date information. So it's a little bit of caution with Facebook in terms of being able to bubble up the information that we want the users to see. With Instagram, this is another one that again I feel is super popular now, where pictures are and videos are being shown. There's 1 billion active users every month. There's also, similar to Twitter, with hashtagging and posting pictures. And again, creating relevancy with the photos. So I think there's probably an opportunity for some level of creativity with Instagram. A lot of people will spend like tons of time making sure they get a great and the perfect picture for posting on their Instagram. But I think our organizations can use Instagram in unique ways to showcase the people and the different like elements of the work that we're doing. So if there's ways to include really, really cool content in terms of photos and videos, I think it can be really interesting in terms of having people starting to like build the followership on the platform. And also like Engaging with Snapchat is another one. I know like this probably causes some like little angst because we, think Snapchat is like, um, you know, like not great. But I will say with Snapchat, it's really like a point in time. You can like push information to everyone and they can see it, and the image or the video appears for a short period of time. It's This is the most used platform among the younger populations. And then finally, we have LinkedIn, which is likely geared a bit more toward young professionals. I do believe more and more people are getting on to LinkedIn in high school these days, where they're starting to build a professional portfolio online. A lot of like a traditional portfolio is now shifted more toward online, and I know LinkedIn is a great way um, to showcase work and also start to build a professional brand online. So using LinkedIn as well as another platform. Um, so again, for success on social media practices, we have to make the content not threatening to the audience. It has to be worth sharing. Um, so creating some type of acknowledgement and recognition for the audience. I think what tends to happen is that we create like some type of brochure or flyer or information about an event, but what happens is that we then just use that one static thing to then push across all the platforms. And I think you have to consider who the audience is, and then also what and how we want them to receive the information. So if we just push out a flyer across all the platforms, that's not going to really get to how the individual and user is actually experiencing what we're trying to share. So you have to consider the audience and the platform that they're using to ensure that the information you're sharing is relevant and is not just like another thing that they have to see and be distracted with. If it actually creates some value or interest and meaning for them, then they will take more away from it, and there's also more likely chance of them seeing it and engaging with it. Um, it's also important to not try to keep up with the Joneses, and what I mean by this is like, especially within an organization, you may have different like parts of the organization using different social platforms. It's important to not just try to compete with them, but also try to create more of a unification of an overall strategy. And what's working for one part of your organization may not be working for another one, or vice versa may not work. So it's important to just to ground yourself on the audience and what messages and information you're trying to convey. And again, of course, being entertaining and informative and genuine is important. So I mentioned this, very basic, don't duplicate. Um, Start with friends and people you have relationships with already. So don't try to hit everyone at one time. It's important to start with the people who you have some type of relationship with that is pre-existing. And then also embracing the audience. So again, welcoming people and creating ways to keep it personal and real. You also have to build some type of maintenance windows into your schedule to clean up maybe some older posts, or to ensure that you're moderating some of the content, and if you're allowing people to engage in a dialogue on there, that you're making sure that what people are saying is respectful and that there's common courtesy happening. And then also, like from a maintenance perspective, going in and making sure that, if anyone is requested to follow or subscribe, etc., that you're approving those requests if it's on more of an approval basis. And then also just making sure that, there's no like spam accounts or anything like that that ends up on your platform. So it's important to like ensure that you're doing some type of regular maintenance, and then encouraging participation. asking people questions, putting discussions out there, um, having them um, do some type of project together, and then showcasing the project that you had people do in the community on these social platforms, or actually using the social platform as a utility to get information and the word out about your campaign. I think is an awesome thing. One thing is, that I've seen done well is like during a like a game, for example. Like if you go to a basketball game, you usually have like a sponsor. Let's call it Dunkin' Donuts. They have like a commercial of sorts that, like a coffee cup is running around a track, and if you guess which one wins and you text a number, you might get some type of prize. This could be like an interesting way for us, like if we are in a school setting or in an environment where we can create some type of awareness, but do it in a way that's fun and also creates an opportunity for the audience to engage. That's when you start to get people following. And there's also some incentive for them. It's fun and interesting while you're just sitting there. But then two is that, you have a chance to win a free coffee. And in turn, that organization then now has a whole bunch of new followers, or I think a lot of it's done like via text even. So you have a lot of people who even can subscribe to your texting platform now. So it's really interesting as you consider what the audience is and how we can infuse content and meet people where they are. And I think that's just like one example of that technically. Social media is a very broad term. And again, it should be part of a overall communication like tool. It should be one tool in the toolkit as we're like considering how we going back to like building this coalition. It's one communication tool that we can use. It's not exhaustive. It shouldn't be the entire plan of how we'll do it, but it's one way. And what I mean by that is there's still, in my opinion, the traditional like emailing and like the traditional forms of communication is also still relevant. So I don't want to diminish any of the like quote unquote like historical ways of communication. But again, this is just one tool or many tools from a social media perspective that you can use. And again, it's important to be clear on the goal, objectives, and target audience. And learning about how social media and your audience is talking, engaging on it is also super, super important to ensuring a thriving platform. So with a platform, again, it's creating engagement and being personal, honest, and transparent. It's a little bit like with traditional forms of communication, it's usually harder for the audience and community to engage and to build a large followership. So how do we move from broadcasting conversation to a dialogue? So this is the evolution of how we've traditionally communicated. A lot of it has been through the radio. We like early days where news was being shared on the radio. Then we started moving in more of a conversation. Now we want to have a dialogue. We want to have a opportunity for everyone to discuss and share their thoughts and opinions, grounded in the information and the key context that we want people to ultimately understand and take away from it. But if we move into more of a dialogue phase where people are listening and hearing and learning from one another, that's when we create the real engagement and real meaning behind the work. So we can measure the success, of course, by the number of followers and likes. But in my opinion, it's really taking it a step further. It's the kind of engagement that was achieved. It's the examples of dialogues that are embedded in the messages we're conveying. And if we can foster this engagement and dialogue, that's when I think the platform has been successful, is when we not only have a lot of followers and likes, which is important, of course, in getting the engagement, but equally, and I think more so, is not just the number of people that you have there, it's the engagement that was achieved on the site or on the platform. And to me, that's more important than just the sheer number of people. You may have 60 followers, or you may have 60 people in a group, but that doesn't mean that that's just because you don't have a lot of people, doesn't mean that that people are not still deriving meaning from the modality that you're using. And so we have to, there's a tendency to moving from listening, monitoring, and responding to proactive and creating incentive, contests, etc. So I think there has to be a intentional effort to shift from responding to proactive, and or from just sharing, boom, to creating some type of fun contest or something, or a scavenger hunt, or a community building workshop, for example, or having people do something together in the community to showcase that you don't need drugs and alcohol to be able to have fun and do things that are meaningful and creating meaning for other people. So again, considering the audience, so who do we want to engage with? What are their expectations? So it's important that, for example, if we take educators, they want to make sure that they have the latest tools and multimedia materials. Participants want to have something that's very topical. They want to have as much fun as possible. The public just wants to have a glimpse of what's going on. And the media also wants to be informed of what's new and hot. So what I was thinking is that if we consider our own audiences, how do we take just the participants line, something that's very topical for them, but then making it fun, and then also sharing with the public a glimpse of what's going on there. So I was thinking, like, if anyone could share not only audiences that you may be trying to reach in your sphere, but also, like, if you could share how you've seen a translated social media effort into something that's fun outside of a event. Does anyone have an example of where you've seen, like, an engagement happen between participants and social media with some type of thing? It could really be anything. Has anyone seen that done in a way that is unique to the audience and message?
Yeah, Mitch, we did an Instagram wellness challenge. I work at a university, so we did an Instagram wellness challenge that students needed to complete the challenge. We did a challenge a day, and it was all wellness based on the 8 dimensions of wellness. So they had to do whatever the thing was and then post it to their Instagram and tag us, our Instagram, so that we could see what they had done. And if there was anyone that didn't want to publicly put it out for security reasons or anything, we would let them message us directly. But it was really fun, and people got very engaged in it because we had them do sort of creative things.
That's a great idea. What were some of the things that you had them do?
They were based on dimensions of wellness. So, like, one of them was they had to go look through for financial wellness, they had to look through the scholarship applications that were available. So we based that around when the scholarships were out so that the students could apply for those to find something for themselves that they could work on. We had them like clean up their space for mental wellness. So they had to show us a picture of where they did their work before and how messy it was, and then clean it up and post that. One night we had them make one day we had them make a fort. They had to make some kind of fort for themselves, like as a space for them to be able to reflect and be quiet in.
I love, these are great. This is a great example. And then was there like some type of incentive or prize at the end, like a gift card or?
We did. We had we had like a NutriBullet, the light blocking glasses for the computer. I think a headset. We had a sleep machine. You could also get a membership for a sleep app. So we tried to make them wellness based as well, because I work out of the wellness center. So
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think there's so many, and I think, and thanks for sharing this. I think there's opportunities for like partnerships to happen as well between and among departments. So you can maybe have a partnership between the career services department and the like wellness center, for example, or the gym.
right.
And
We actually did both. Sorry to interrupt you. We
no,
actually
no,
did both of those. So we had them, they had to complete, we have Handshake, which is a platform for students to profile themselves on and be able to go to interviews. So you had to complete your Handshake profile. And another one was being involved with some of the workouts that the rec center was offering, both in person and on their social media platforms. So they were doing some things by Zoom for people who still weren't comfortable coming to events in person.
this is great. Yeah, I think the integrated approach is really, really important, because what tends to happen, I think, in a university setting and even in a school setting, is that information is just pushed out like from departments, so that there's people are getting inundated with information from the specific department, rather than trying to come up with like a cohesive strategy for communication and engagement. I think this is like a huge opportunity, because what tends to happen is people are getting emails. You get an email about a basketball game, or you get an email from the rec center with a list of the classes, or you get, you know, a notification from the career services center to sign up for a resume workshop. But if there's a way to do what Anne did, is to then build a strategy around the things that we're all doing, like that are like everyone experiences, whether you're at a university or you're in a company. This happens all the time, where there's no integrated approach. Like HR is doing one thing over here, our our benefits team is doing one thing, our our payroll team and finance is doing this thing, and then this department is doing this training. So like it's important that we also think through, and it gets more and more matrixed as like the complexity of the organization is so great. But it's important, I think, to try to team up and partner with people across, because you then get more engagement, and you also start to tap into other communities of people that you may not normally have an opportunity to interact with. Like you may just have someone who goes to the gym who doesn't even consider career services at all, but then they see this campaign going on and they're excited about participating. And again, it's fun. It created a fun space for people to engage and to like have fun with one another. Another thing this maybe was thinking about is like with some type of like community service or like community action project, if you can start to like put out there to people, hey, like let's go do something in the community that like can really make a difference. There's so many ways you could also embed different like wellness things. I like one organization I think that did this really well. It was Habitat for Humanity. They have a really strong base of people, and essentially you're all, as a participant, going to work on something in a project that's like bigger than yourself. And so you're actually immersing yourself with people who have who have a fundamental mission to want to help out. And I think, again, you have to then point to broader things, like during the time that you participated in building a house, you didn't have to have alcohol, you didn't have to have drugs. It actually was a great outlet for you to do some to get step outside of the day to day and to do something for someone else. And I think the pointing back to um, a broader sentiment that people can get from the activity, I think is always like really, really meaningful, and also really, it makes it more fun and enjoyable as well. So, Anne, thank you for sharing that. I think that's amazing. And I think there's so many different opportunities like that, um, that we can do that also aren't as like that is really, that does take a lot of time too to get off the ground. But you can even do something as simple as like at a game, have some type of challenge or something, or you know to something like online where you're having people, while everyone's at home. I love the idea of like, cleaning up your desk space or setting up an ergonomic office at home, and like, here are some tips on how to do that. Um some tips on like building connection and um relationships online. How do we do it today? Like, it's important to carve out time to meet one-on-one with people, um and have a Zoom meeting one-on-one, because in these large meetings we don't have really an opportunity to get to know each other. It's like we're just talking about whatever the topic is at hand that we're all here for to discuss, but we don't get to know each other. As in a traditional way, if you're in person, you do have time during breaks, and there's downtime for you to actually engage and to work with people. And I think more and more, as we're doing these things online like this, we don't have that opportunity to actually build relationships. It's very one-sided. So again, I think that's a great way for us to all consider and kind of approach things with a viewpoint of, how would someone who's interacting with the information that we are trying to convey, how would they be able to have fun and do something with it? So with that, I would like to we're about an hour into the session. I want to take a 10-minute break. So if we could come back at 10 minutes after, that would be great. And we'll get started. So, oh, sorry, not 10 minutes after, 40 minutes after the hour. I will see you back in 10 minutes. And if folks are taking a little bit more of an extended break, if you could join the breakout room, you should have up on your screen. All right. So folks are just coming back. I'm curious if any group would want to share what they discussed about. Is there any volunteers? And just feel free to come off mute. Claire, were you going to share? So I come off mute.
Oh, I'm sorry, my internet just went out as soon as we got into the group. So I was like, oh no.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
I can share. This
Thanks.
is Brittany. So my group, we had two different examples shared. One that I shared is a campaign that my organization is still developing out, which is a metabolic syndrome awareness campaign. And what is it? It is really a video-based campaign to bring awareness to what metabolic syndrome is, which is like 3 or more of 5 conditions like diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, and bringing awareness to the preventative strategies for that. And some of our call to actions vary based on the age group, but really call to actions around visiting a clinic that does the screenings that are needed to prevent metabolic syndrome. If somebody's living with a chronic condition, getting enrolled in chronic disease self-management. If we're targeting, if it's more of our youth messaging, it's really focused on prevention, making sure that they're half their plates are fruits and veggies, making sure that they are a part of advocacy work to increase access in their communities. And I mentioned that it was really great what Anne shared about once you do those call to action, kind of having them reshare that on their social media. And I think that's a great way to kind of see their responses. And then we also had someone from the group share about how they are using social media to increase awareness about their gym in the community. So really sharing posts about the gym, really asking people to reshare and getting them engaged and involved in that process. So those were some of the strategies that we discussed in our breakout group.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the metabolic syndrome campaign, I think the actions that you're having people take is fantastic, and it also puts it into perspective for them. And I agree. I think what Anne shared in terms of having people share back their journey and their experiences doing each of the recommended activities is always a fantastic way for people to see. And then they also may see, oh, wow, that's really cool. This person's doing that. You know, I might want to try it out, or I might want to do it too. And just to be part of it. And then, yeah, so that's a great, really great example. And then with the gym example, you know, I think that promoting that is, you know, is great. And I would challenge that point to say, how could we create awareness about the gym in a way that gets people more excited about wanting to work out? And so this could be like in partnership with, you know, doing some mental health work, or detaching from work and taking time for self-care, and you know, the importance of needing to promote a balanced life in terms of working out. And you know, it's not just one thing in terms of like doing your work and getting work done, but also having a balanced life with living a healthy lifestyle, and taking time to take a break and you know, step outside of work and work out. And I think what you could do is have people share their personal stories. And I think more and more people are becoming comfortable now with sharing their own stories around mental health. For example, for me, I reached a point where I was like really burned out and feeling really demotivated. And it was because of my diet, and I had some really bad stomach issue. And so, but it ended up being that I was not taking care of the my physical side. And I think as you have more and more people sharing their experiences and what they did to help mitigate and prevent that from happening to someone else, is that, you know, you have to have people share. And I think that's the only way that we can have people meaningfully engaged with one another on this work that we're doing here, because it's hard work and we shouldn't have to go at it alone. And people that you will meet have all gone through different experiences and can share as well. You don't have to be like a gym nut and going all the time and like super intense working out, like 30 minutes a day, you know, doing a jog on the treadmill and some weights, like that actually is super important for overall like health and well-being. And as just getting people to just talk about their own experiences, I think you'll have like just such amazing amazing benefits. And what a lot of people see in the media is that, you know, you have to be really fit and like look amazing and blah blah, but like if we transcend that and just look at ordinary individuals, everyday people that we interact with and their stories, like I think we'll be surprised with what we find and how we can turn that messaging into a story that we share with other people to build the followership. So thank you for sharing that, Brittany. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else from the other groups that would like to share what they discussed? Okay. If not, no worries. So, so here are some examples that I thought are interesting. Like, again, kind of building on what we were talking about and the examples shared, is that, you know, we have to ask what the audience wants to know. So, for example, from like a health service office, stakeholders want mental health resources and a health tip a day. One thing that we do at work, which I think is really cool, is we have this like no technology Tuesday at night kind of thing. So you're not supposed to like look at your emails or your computer or anything. You're just supposed to like have a no technology Tuesday. And then what we do is the following morning ask, what did you do during your no technology Tuesday? And it's part of a smaller group that you can sign up for this like challenge. And the key is that you have to say what you did. And so there's some level of accountability there. And then around that, it's in order like to sign up for this, if you want to participate in the challenge, you have to actually commit to not doing technology on Tuesday nights. So you can't like send emails after hours or like look at anything or watch TV. Like you actually have to read a book, or it's really kind of funny what people share about what they do. Like, you know, they went for a walk, they went to the park, they took time to write someone a letter. Like there's just so many interesting things we can do when we actually also set technology aside, and also like feel that you're part of a community as well. So not only is that promoting mental health, but it's a good tip to say, like, reminding us that it's good to step outside. So that another interesting example is this Eyewitness Weather. It's a platform that people can actually send a photo of the weather conditions around them. So like, you know, when you look at the weather, sometimes you may want to think, oh, is it sunny at the park? You know, and you look at the weather and it says sunny, but then when you get to the park, it's not sunny. So there's this app where ordinary people can post a photo of the weather and you can see what it's actually like for people who are there. I don't know if anyone has like a Ring doorbell, but another thing they also have is like neighborhood crime as well. So like based on your local area, the Ring doorbells capture the video when someone's at the door, and it actually shows like crimes that are happening in real time, like theft or break-in or vandalism. You can actually see in real time, and it's reported on the app, like on this neighbors app, which is you wouldn't think like it, but it's just kind of funny like to look at. And like because these things are constantly recording. It's just super interesting. um Zappos, the shoe company, did a like a campaign where it was like, if you send us a photo wearing our product, we'll post it on our fan page and have a fan of the week. You could also do this easily, like with your communities as well. Like find some people to showcase, like find a student to showcase, find a educator or someone in the community to showcase, and excuse me, um and post them like the fan of the week, post a little blurb about their story, like why we're posting about that. um and then again, like there was this this individual who created a campaign for cancer prevention that raised a bunch of money, and it was just a matter of sharing a personal story. It ended up going viral to the fact point where so many people read it and contributed to the campaign, and it was so much awareness created around it, that again, I still believe that the more we're able to share our personal stories and journeys and experiences with more people, the more likely we will get an audience that is engaged and is actually getting something from what we're sharing and doing. So thought that was interesting. If there's, I thought like I pulled some examples here, like for what a health educator could do with a Facebook group. There could be creating a promotional materials that are sent, but then also asking for specific action. Like asking what the community wants or asking how the community is feeling, and then being able to tailor the messaging around things that are really relevant. So I thought like the metabolic syndrome campaign, Brittany, that you were talking about, I think was fantastic in terms of you're thinking through what are we creating awareness around? Great. And then how are we going to do that? Promoting healthy foods, having people visit clinics to get a scan, doing things that are beneficial to them in the context of what we're trying to share and what we're trying to build awareness around. You can also engage other people in this work. So I've often found that if you bring together experts on a particular topic, or people who are familiar, or people who are in the community that you're serving are familiar with, like individuals who are predominantly seen as promoting this type of work, for example, doctors or nursing staff, or in the context of like a nutritionist, for example, like getting people, experts in, and having them do some type of Q&A session, or having them participate in the causes with you as well, also takes it from just a local kind of thing done within your organization, but also expands it now to other facets and other circles, so that you're now creating some divergence between what a participant is able to gain. So it's not just you as the health educator putting this on, but it's also in partnership with a local hospital or a clinic. And then that also creates some benefits and opportunities for cross collaboration as well. So and awareness, frankly. And you also may get more people there, because they'll see, oh wow, like they're building, on with this group, and this person that we see as predominantly a figure in this area, coming to showcase and be part of the work, often leads to greater attendance and participation, which I think is always awesome. So with participants, I saw this example, I loved it, where there was an event and the organizers for the event were actually wearing a t-shirt that had a hashtag on it, that they asked participants during the event to post photos and to post about their experience on Twitter. So real time, you're seeing people posting um, how they're experiencing the event. And I thought it was a really cool thing. And it's very simple. Like often we're making t-shirts or we're making some type of flyer, and this could be embedded into the content, is like just put a Twitter hashtag on there and have people tweet you and then retweet them during the event. And it shows again how people are experiencing what they're doing. And you can do this even during a campaign, like Anne was mentioning, where you're having people do this real time. And then with the general public, again, I think you could do some type of contest, and you could have a free giveaway for a car wash, or if you attend a XYZ training, or if you do something that we're asking you to do or participate in this challenge or campaign, there's something, there's like not then you don't always have to have an incentive either. I don't think, like, it's if you're making what you're having people do and gain from it relevant and interesting to them, I don't always think you need to have a incentive for people to do it. I think sometimes people will just do it because it's fun and they have nothing else to do. So with that, we are going to transition gears a bit to talking about how we'll support productive engagement in online communities. So we've talked a lot about, from a social media perspective, some unique things that we can do, but I think it's important for us to double click on the online engagement through productive communities online. So let's transition into that here. Okay. So again, considering what communities people are using, how we can support participants to engage productively, and then how we can develop our own subject matter expertise, which is what we're all doing here. So I'm hoping that we understand the importance of supporting a productive engagement, the ways in which we can do so, and then areas of your own development that we may need to explore a bit more, and knowledge gaps that we have in doing these online communities effectively. So I think as we, this is, I think in terms of like productive engagement, how we reach this level, and we've kind of talked about this throughout the day today, but I think it's important to keep this in context of the work we do here, is that we have to move through this pyramid all the way to the top, where you have achieved functional access. So you've created the pages, they're out there, but then if we're moving to, adapting technology for academic use, we've now decided, okay, we're going to try to use technology. We're going to obtain high quality information. So we're going to make sure that we're pushing out to our constituencies the most updated information through research that we conducted. And then we evaluate and engage with the information. And then finally, we're able to then take the information that we have to engage productively with relevant online communities. This is kind of the top level thinking once we kind of nail the steps before, and become not, you don't necessarily have to become an expert, but you know enough about the information to then creatively apply it and to help other people engage with it. So again, I think we have to use appropriate communication technology. We have to know how and when to maintain levels of privacy. I think this was mentioned, where if people don't feel comfortable sharing, because it could be quite private to them, that we are ensuring that we communicate with people that, like, we won't share anything that you don't want us to share. We'll keep everything private. especially around these areas that could blur the line between what we're able to share from like a health perspective, and things that are also deeply personal to people too. I think is always there's always a fine line there. So it's important to ensure that we are maintaining a level of privacy. We have to be able to use multiple technologies, and what I mean by this is that people are always on the go with their phones, and so we have to do things that are always like thinking about mobile first. We have to communicate effectively, which we've talked about, and we have to develop fluency in a command voice in online authoring and publishing. I think what tends to happen is that it can be information overload for people. So how do we communicate in a fluent and a voice that commands authority online? So what I think is super interesting, I saw this this happens in 1 minute online. There's like 100,000 new tweets. There's 2 million searches happening. There's 20 victims of identity theft. There's 204 million emails sent. $83,000 in sales happens. So like, there's so many things that happen in a like a millisecond, and things that took like 5 years now take like 5 seconds or a second. So I think it's just super interesting. So some barriers that we have to online participation from communities is that people may feel there's an invasion of privacy or that there's public criticism. I think these are our two biggest areas that we have to overcome when trying to engage with communities online. And what I mean by that is we have to help people get over the notion that this is going to create some type of invasion of privacy, or that their trust is going to be broken. And by doing that upfront with creating ground rules and a platform, as we talked about in our first session, for people to feel safe and comfortable sharing, and so that their ideas will not be just shot down or publicly criticized. I think this is where a lot of people experience fear in wanting to participate and take part. And I think as in the prevention space, this is a huge area to overcome. And I also think this applies to many things, but I think often people are afraid of going out and facing public criticism for something that they share, just because their viewpoint may differ, or people may cast a judgment or spell this. So I think it's important, again, to create a community that has some really solid ground rules for participation, but also that there's like moderation happening as well, where if there are things that are disrespectful being posted, or if people are making rude comments or making fun of people, that they are taken down, and that they are not able to participate in the group after fair warning. I think it's important to hold people accountable as well. And then there's also the fear of public criticism, where people may think they're being judged or publicly face criticism for what they've shared, or they're choosing to participate in something. And there's also the lack of time. People are pulled in so many different ways in different areas. There's also a lack of self-confidence. Sometimes people may be ashamed of sharing something that could be so deeply personal to them that they just don't want to, or they don't have a desire to. And I think that this goes back to our roles in encouraging people to do so, and to create a space for having an open door and an open mind for people to share how they're experiencing whatever they're going through, and then just for you to listen and to understand. And then there's also a lack of knowledge. There's like so much out there. Also, it's also could be overwhelming in terms of the amount of options and different things. Like when I was going through the thing with my stomach, I was like trying to figure out a healthier diet. Like there's so many things out there. There's like you can do like eat nothing or have these shakes or have these like pre-cooked meals. Like there's so many options out there that it's like just overwhelming. And it's like people don't know where to start either. It's just like so much. Um, and then just talking about it too. I think if you're opening up more about it, you may actually find that other people have gone through something similar. So I found one of my friends actually went through something similar, and more people I'm finding out have gone through it as well. And I think it's okay. Like, but this again, this fear of us having criticism is a real fear. Um, um, I thought this was interesting. Um, there's this digital identity mapping that I found that um, is it puts into perspective how people like where they're choosing, which platforms they're choosing to go to, and then kind of what that signifies for them. So for example, with avatars, like this is kind of this whole Second Life thing, or Sims, World of Warcraft. This is like what represents me. You could basically become someone else. Or from a purchase perspective, like buying things. Okay, these are some platforms that you would go to. Profession with LinkedIn, Monster, Handshake was another one mentioned. This is like where you work. So there's different contexts for where people go to have a digital identity. And I thought this is really interesting to look at. So where do we start? How could we start to support participants to engage productively within online communities? I I think not creating some level of comparison to where influencers spread content is like kind of helps to paint a broader picture of this is just more than social media, but this is beyond that. This is like influencers are not only spreading information via these social platforms that we talked about, but there's also email, there's forums, there's groups, word of mouth, mainstream media, broadcast. Like, for example, I remember I've seen a few examples like at universities where they have these like smart boards on campus where like you're walking around the campus and you can actually see information. It's a great way to get content out there. There's the like weekly newspapers. Those are another great way to get content out there. So again, it should be part of a broader strategy when you're thinking about applying social media in the lens of how we want to share and convey messages. So what types of content are likely to go viral? I thought, oh, sorry, I thought this was interesting. Like, we have like stunning design. So if something is like really visually appealing, that's gonna like be something that people will want to share and to talk about. Things that don't have ads, things that are non-commercialized, so things that are more localized to the context with where people are. There's graphics that are clever. It's very clear and concise writing. There's high accessibility, and like paying close important attention to accessibility. Like if you have, for example, a poster that has like white text with a dark background, it's often hard for people to see from like an accessibility perspective. Or if you have a flyer that has 1 million words and it's really small, not a lot of people are going to necessarily take the time to read it. So how are we making sure we get the right points to the audience that we're trying to convey messaging to? And then that it's also coming from an authoritative source, where it's like there is experts behind it. It's not just an opinion-based thing. And then it's also very clear and easy to navigate. So if you're asking people to do something or to take an action, that it's super easy. Like at restaurants, this is like totally revolutionized the whole thing of having a menu where you scan a QR code and the menu pops up on your phone. It's so easy to navigate, and universally everyone can access it. So finding ways to continue to embed those type of things into like your campaigns, and like meeting the users where they are. Like everyone has the smartphone in their pocket. They can scan the QR code and go to a website. Some turnoffs is that the ads are obtrusive. There's the website is difficult to navigate. It's too complicated. There's just too much information on it. It's too hard to search on the site. So what often is like people spend usually like 10 seconds on a page, like, or less even. And if they can't find what they're looking for right away, they just get frustrated and give up and go somewhere else to look for the information. There's long, hard URLs for people to remember. So I've seen things where it's like people are posting these long things. There's URL shorteners out there that you could use to shorten the URL so that it links to the site without being a super long URL. That's much easier and it looks better in any type of like sharing online, like instead of posting this like huge link, which doesn't look good. Also, when things are split into multiple pages, people usually just want to see the salient information like on one page, and have it right at their fingertips to access right away. Okay. We'll do a breakout room again. I would just love for you to discuss how your participants are currently engaging in online communities, and how might you develop engagement in this online community with your participants in your own discipline. So how do you currently have people engaging in a community online, and then how can we continue to foster and develop this engagement? So what are some things that you could do to continue the discussion? So we'll do another a quick breakout. We'll do maybe 5 or 7 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and start talking about how we could put this into a strategy for you to take back to your organizations. So let's see here. I'm going to do breakout rooms. We'll do. Okay, I'm going to assign everyone now. See you back shortly. Okay, I think we have everyone back. Is there any group that would like to share what they discussed? Would love to hear any examples of how people are engaging in online communities and how we can take it a step further. Let's see, Claire, I think not to call on you.
So I shared that we have an Instagram and we're pretty new to social media. So we're still kind of figuring out our plan, but we use a lot of the story functions on Instagram. So we will do like polls, or students can like submit their answers to questions. It seems like they enjoy that, and it's kind of like a little way to like share their opinion or how they feel about something. And something that we've thought about taking that further, hopefully as we build our following in the upcoming school year, is having like more like a live Q&A kind of session with like a health educator to answer any of their specific questions, which can be done pretty anonymously. So that was one thought for us, because it seems like the story engagements are pretty popular.
Awesome. That's great. Awesome examples. Yeah, and pretty lightweight as well. I think it's, having just someone available to just answer questions and for people to talk to is a great way to create awareness. You're going right to them. It's not that they have to sign up for an appointment with somebody, but they're there and present and able to answer questions as they come in. I think is really, really great. And again, it creates relevancy as well for the participants. And then other people can listen to other people's questions too. So it's a mutual benefit for everyone. Is there any other group that had some ideas they'd want to share? Maybe we could do one more example.
Mitch, this is Anne. Our group talked about sort of the incentives to get people to participate in things, so that if you were giving something away, and Heather mentioned that they had done giving away a t-shirt, and then they were able to have people, if you tagged friends or reposted a post they had done, you would, I think if I have this right, Heather, you'd be entered to win that t-shirt.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And Heather, what was could you talk a little bit more about the event or?
Yeah, so I was actually the person that brought up in the first breakout group that we had, that my husband and I are opening up a gym. And one way to kind of gain community awareness about our facility, we did a giveaway, and it was based off Instagram, but it was also shared to Facebook. And we were giving away a t-shirt, and we had everybody who saw it, they had to like it, they had to follow our account, they would tag 3 friends in the comments, and then they just like had to share a fitness goal of theirs for the year coming up. And it was a great way to get the word out there, and we've had like awesome feedback, and yeah, it was just a great way to reach out to multiple groups of people.
That's great. Yeah, and I think if you could, with the gym in particular, I think there's opportunities to engage with like so many different parts of the community too. Like you might do something with like a local university, or you may do something with a business in the community to then have some type of shared collaboration between, and then you're kind of tapping into people from other spheres too. But I love that. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. And people love giveaway items. They don't always have to be like super expensive. Like it could be one thing that was cool is like during COVID, I saw a lot of like people giving out small bottles of hand sanitizer that has like the company. It's just very useful. Or like if in a gym context, like a top like a water like a water bottle that could be reused and refilled up. So yeah, things like that. And then again, having people not just receive this item for free, but they have to actually do something to like to get it. Like they have to make a post about a fitness goal, or they have to, you know, take a picture of them wearing the shirt at the gym, or things like that. Then kind of creates awareness in different ways, which is really, really cool. And then again, it's more engaging, and creates an opportunity for its participation. Okay, so in our last 30 minutes today, we are going to start to translate this into putting pen to paper in terms of developing a strategy. So I kind of want to give you some time. I'm going to kind of talk through the approach for that you can use when thinking through a strategy. But I also want to leave, even if it's just a few minutes at the end, for you to have time to work on the strategy, or to kind of maybe have a little bit of headspace to think and process the information that we've been going through here today. Because I think a lot of this is we don't have the time to think about this like critically, and how we would go about what type of thing we're trying to do. So I want to also have a little bit of experiential time for you to consider what you may do, and to start to think about the strategy that you would take. I just want to highlight that often with change, just to kind of ground ourselves, is that it's the process of moving from the current state to a future state. This could be applied to pretty much anything that is related to a change that we're trying to drive. With social media adoption, it is a change often for organizations and for people that are in it, both from a perspective of maybe not having as much familiarity doing it, to then going to a future state of what we're trying to achieve with more followership and trying to provide relevant information and meeting people where they are. And I just want to kind of ground us that it can feel at times a bit messy, and it could also feel like you don't know what you're doing. And that's okay, because it's hard to get from like where we are right now to where you want to go. And also, I will say that you may look into doing something and providing more of a social first strategy, and then you may realize that that's not the right way to that's not working. So you may have to pivot and try something else. But it really, to me, starts with not just a strategy, structure, culture, or system in place, but it's changing behavior of people and how they think and see what is new or proposed. So I think you'll get met with a lot of resistance, probably internally, for wanting to do a social media campaign, or an effort where you're trying to challenge kind of how things have been done before, because people are resistant to change, and they say we've always done it this way, we've always had this event this way, like it doesn't make sense to incorporate social media, we don't know how to do it, and like it's too hard, and no one's going to follow up and do anything. And I think this is kind of what we are battling when we're trying to do any type of change, frankly. And so it's important to just keep that in mind as you're kind of the change agents going back now to your organizations with some new information, hopefully that you can apply to your work, even if it was like one or two things that you took away from the session or heard from someone else, that can help to dispel some of the fears and challenges that we talked about earlier, because those are real things, and they do have to be considered when we're coming up with the social media strategy, especially as we're doing it and going back to our boss or our team with some ideas, like, because they're going to have these concerns too. So it is a real thing, and I would say also it's okay to try things as well. Like, even if you don't have a full-blown strategy and you're like doing all of these like cross-departmental things, and like it's okay just to try it and see how it goes. And and then start to ask people like, how did you hear about this event, or how did you hear about our website? Then you actually can start to understand how people are receiving the information and how people are interacting with it. If you just ask them like, how did you hear about it, how, like, what's working, to then measure and evaluate what you're doing. So in terms of a social strategy, again, defining the policy and process, and this is arguably extremely important because you have to have some like groundwork laid in terms of a policy and process for what you'll do. It'll just make it much easier in the long run to manage if you have a policy and process, because if you don't, and a lot of institutions already have like an overall policy, so it's important to familiarize yourself with that, of course. But then from a process perspective, it can be a little bit, not a little bit, it is very time consuming to manage a social strategy across many different sites. There are tools that you can use that like integrate with many platforms, but again, it is a lot of work. You want to set clear goals and targets for yourself, and you want to set these goals and targets that are measurable as you attain them. Like, so you start with like doing Instagram, and then you say, we want to have X number of followers on Instagram, and we want to follow X number by this date. So setting and tracking the progress, it often leads to just a more successful overall social strategy. And then again, this has been mentioned, but integration with the overall plan is really important. Again, this is one component, and then making it personal and interactive. So I thought in the context of our work here and the stakeholders that we interact with, this is the different goals that they may have as you consider how they would interact with your platform or your site or your campaign or your event. So you have constituents, caretakers, family members. Their goal is really for education and resources. You have donors. This is like, we're trying to raise awareness and raise funds. Board members and volunteers. Again, this goes back to our kind of coalition building, recruiting and engaging new and potential supporters. Mental health community of practitioners. This could be we're trying to establish thought leadership. We're trying to establish a community of practice where we're all sharing ideas and co-creating things. Media, again, could be thought leadership and awareness. So you want to understand who are your stakeholders, and then what are the goals like that you have for each stakeholder group. And this is framing the audience, not only just understanding who they are and like their age group and what platforms they're using and all the other stuff, but what is your goal in relation to the context of your work that you hope that they gain from what you're trying to share and what you're doing. And then you want to choose platforms and the frequency of the amount of times that you're going out on them. So like with Facebook, like typically the recommended frequency would be no more than twice a day, and you would want to alternate days. And then the type of content, this is what we're going back to earlier and mentioning, of like, we want the content to be visual. We want to be like very succinct, 80 characters, personal, touching, that sparks emotion, that is really can like be quick read, quick see, boom, boom, understand the message. Twitter can be something that's done several times a day throughout the day, like as real-time events are unfolding, can be done throughout the day several times. And for this, we would want to have content on Twitter that's catchy, headlines, short and straightforward how-tos, resources, news, things that you can just go to right away and just read, boom, boom, you see what's going on. LinkedIn, 2 or 3 times a week is pretty good with LinkedIn. again, this is more of the professional audience, thought leadership, volunteer groups, community groups, employment opportunities, volunteer opportunities, etc. So again, considering our platform and the type of content and frequency will then help us to determine what to do. Pinterest was mentioned. This is often, good weekly, and like memes, images, graphic elements, infographics are always great things to share on Instagram. The one that was great out here is, let me think. Sorry, no, this is Twitter from the other one. LinkedIn, we also had before. Okay. So I think just taking a step back, once we've considered the audience, their goals, and then the platform and content type and frequency, we then need to develop an editorial calendar. And I think this is really important in just taking a step back and framing what are the key messages that we want to share, to whom, and at which points. So this is determining, like, working backwards if you have an event or if you have a major campaign, and how will we build awareness around that? What will we do a few weeks before, a few months before, or even a year before to start to build awareness around the message we're trying to convey and how we'll get there? So by creating these moments in time, whether we're seeding messages throughout existing content that we have, or we're making intentional efforts to target people where they are, be it at orientation, be it at a registered student organization fair, be it at a farmer's market, whatever it is, you want to create a calendar where you are thoughtfully mapping out the days and times and methods and channels that you would like to get your message out, and then conversely, how you want people to then engage in that cycle of information. So it's not only just like, when are we going to publish, when are we going to push things out, but then what is the cycle for then having people interact and engage? And then are these major milestones and events that are happening through some type of community action project, some type of event, some type of ask that we have of them. And often, if we think about this in the context of other things that are going on around people, so like, for example, looking at an editorial calendar, ensuring we're scheduling around breaks, or we're scheduling around finals week, or trying to, like, or people coming back to campus, or freshman orientation, like create, like looking at the broader calendar and what's going on. And then of course, as people are moving throughout the year, what are some things that come up? We know, for example, during the holidays, like mental health challenges are on the rise. During COVID, we knew that people feeling isolated and lonely was on the rise. So we met people where they were by providing the resources and information that they need at the time. Same thing with the context of someone going through like well-being. Like, you may experience needing to provide people with more well-being resources at the beginning of the year when they're setting goals and things to work on for the year. Like, that's when it's great to provide like information about joining a gym, or working out, or getting a trainer, things like that. So it's topical in the context of not just with messages and things you want to convey, but also more broadly what's happening around the overall ecosystem, and creating the partnerships there that really matter. Like with career services, maybe around a career fair, we are targeting students there with like how to like carve out time management for resume writing, or how are we like ensuring that the message that we're creating online is commensurate with becoming a professional. Like, if you're drinking in photos online, or you're posting things that are not good, or like engaging in using vape pens, like, and so there's a picture of you posted on Facebook, well, like that's not the message you want to convey. So like connecting this to broader editorial events that are happening is always prudent. So measure and optimize. So this is where we're checking in to see at those moments that we're pushing out messages or we're seeing engagement in the community. Who was engaged, how were they engaged, and to what extent is there a dialogue happening and this like cross sharing of information, and then how are we taking that information to then optimize and focus on the really big investments that are getting most utility for them. So like if we can focus on one versus doing like 10 really well, it's better to do the one that's yielding the most outcome for you, that you're based on your overall strategy that you're trying to achieve. And if you think about this in the context of like an awareness campaign or something, you want to understand the audience, but also like it's important to consider the message and which platform, because I think what happens is like people are like, oh, we need to create like a Facebook group because that's everyone's on Facebook, and like then you may find, oh, actually not everyone's on Facebook, and then what you may find is that the message that you're trying to convey to people doesn't actually make sense in a Facebook group type of thing. So you have to consider like before you embark on any type of journey like this, like what is the message and what do you hope that people gain from it, and then how do you measure the things that you're doing to then optimize and focus. So killer content, you want to add value. This is like really, really important. You want to have content that adds value to people. And this is not only making it timely, not only fitting into the context of where they are, but it's accurate, it's noteworthy, it's timely, and it is excellent content that is interesting for people to pick up and read. So it's great that you're doing this effort and promoting this thing, but what value is that adding to somebody? Because they participated in this campaign, what value did that add for them that they intrinsically would not have gotten if they didn't do it? And then how can we create a space for people to then share the value that they got from it? That's where we take it from this notion of we have this random event, and these are their goals for the event, into then actually translating it back to the measuring piece. What value and purpose did this add? And it's often hard to quantify that because we don't take time to do the follow-up, or we don't create the space for people to share. And a survey is one thing, but that's typically never shared back with the people who participate. So you don't really know actually if, like, I never understand if that was good or if that was, I mean, I do as like the person who's putting the event on, but I don't know then from the other participants, what value did they glean from it? And then what did I glean? Like if I were to write and reflect and create that time and space for people to do that, I don't think we often do that. And so I think it's like really interesting because we have so many, like, we want information instantly, we want things like instant gratification, and yet we take away people's cell phones and we tell people not to use them and they can't be on them. But yet if we maybe enable people to use technology for good and for sharing, then and creating that platform to do so, I think there's really magical things that can happen. So I think we just have to kind of think about this in the framing context of like, we have to have some level of trust too, that people are going to do the right thing, and that if they don't, we are clear upfront about the expectations we have. Okay, so I know we don't have much time, but I really do want to share this resource with you that hopefully will be useful for you if you are thinking about doing a social media strategy. And so I'm going to, and we will absolutely, we will have Jennifer share this out with the slides, so you can, so if you don't get the link down, it's okay, but I'll ping the link in here. So you should have access, and you should be able to just make a copy of it to use for yourself or download it as a Word document. But a lot of the content that we went through, and I'm just going to make this bigger, a lot of the content that we went through here is captured. So this should be pretty all encompassing of what you would need to do before you embark on a social media campaign. And then it also has, different descriptions about where and when you would use the various platforms that we talked through. Again, how we would approach the development of the strategy, what to be prepared for. Again, this is kind of talking about the fears and anxieties that people go through. Who can help you? Often there's people that you can go to, like, again, in your organization that can help you navigate this process, that you don't feel like you're totally on your own. Sometimes things have to be approved by different communications department or marketing department. So just if you do engage with them, make sure that you're keep that in mind. But again, like, it's great to do a situation analysis, like a SWOT analysis, almost, to understand, like, what are the problems, what are the opportunities, what are the objectives that we have, who is our target audience, internally, externally, what are the social media channels we're going to use, what key messages do we want to get out there, what is the branding, but like often, like, the institution will have its own overall brand, but then are there kind of like sub brands in there, and then how do we translate that? This is a great pre-launch and promotion building, like almost like timeline or like project description. So, like, here's some different activities, like obtain approval, like use an existing website and add just like a simple link to like our Facebook page, like things that can be really simple to do, really low hanging fruit. You can capture here as like pre-launch activities. And then, like, what relationships do we have to build, and like the story do we have to create before we just start, like, go run off and do these things. Content planning, like who's going to write the content, the post, how often, what kind of budget do we have? Are there legal considerations we want to have? Again, in this space, I do think there would be, in terms of privacy and sharing. Some example community guidelines that we've talked about in the earlier session. There's also example like Facebook disclaimers that you could use, like that were, like, so just some like information is like, we're kind of these administrators of the page, and just like some verbiage that might be helpful even to add to an existing page. Measurement and evaluation, I thought this was great as well, just to kind of think through what are our objectives, how are we measuring them, and then what is the target, and then like looking back at that to see if you were able to do that. There's like Hootsuite is one that a lot of really popular, Google Analytics is popular, Facebook Insights. But these are some tools that you can use to actually measure the effectiveness of your campaigns. Record keeping, how are you going to keep a record? It's important. I think often it's hard to go back, like if you're trying to do a summary of how the year went, for example, to go back and see what were all the messages that were put out. So I think it's important to keep a record of what was done. Do a regular review and check-in period and how you'll set that. There's also this risk and mitigation strategy. So if you already have some type of social media strategy in place, what are the risks, and then what are some actions you could take to mitigate those risks? And then also included a content schedule as well, so you could populate like the proposed post, the date, and then who's responsible for writing it, and then just this social media response about just comments in general, and what may or may not make sense to include or take down in terms of if there's things that are out there that are not good. So with that, I'm regrettably, I know there's not much time now, but I hope this is useful. And again, Jennifer will share the resources with you all. I do want to thank you for, again, joining these sessions, and hopefully it was useful, and you're able to take some of the information back. And I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn as well. And we will share the materials with you, but I hope everyone has a great weekend and a great holiday. And again, this is just one facet of the overall landscape of building a coalition and getting people behind the messages of what we're trying to share. I've heard some really great ideas over the past 2 sessions that hopefully you could take back. So I want to thank you all for your participation, and I hope you have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you, Mitch, for the great presentation. Just to echo what he said, the materials I'll have sent out to you guys probably at the beginning of next week, as well as certificates will be coming out in the next 2 weeks. Thank you for your participation. And thank you again, Mitch. I hope to see you guys in another event.